and you should too.
Not again. Hello? 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 Who is it? We're here for the show. What show? We're filming a television show. This is a medieval castle, you silly man. It's for besieging and sword fighting. It's not for some so-called television program. But we made arrangements. Strange person. I am bored of you. Your auntie soiled her knickers, and your mother was a vacuum cleaner. Huh? Let us in! I spit on your gonads, you quarter-witted son of a cabbage hunter. Is there someone else up there that I can speak to? Go boil your bottom. Can you throw him off the ramparts, please? All right. Right.
Well, I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
Oh, well, Stephen Fry. Stephen, it is lovely to have you here, you silly man.
It's lovely to be had here, if I may
I
say.
want to know about cricket because you've just become president of the MCC, and he has just shown me this tie. Show the tie.
Yes,
and
it's
he
an
claims
MCC
it's an
tie.
MCC
Can you
tie.
zoom in to that little symbol there? It's the device that says MCC, Marylebone Cricket Club,
Isn't that
or 1,200 in Roman numerals. Yes, I mean,
But you
I
have
know.
to be a member to get that. Right?
Yes,
Yeah.
you buy it from the members' shop at Lord's.
So tell me about cricket, because it's all changing. And it's a beautiful, beautiful game. It's still the only game that is very like the one I used to watch in Western Supermare in Clarence Park in 1948.
Well, that's because we're guardians of the law, the laws of cricket, the MCC. Other games have rules. Cricket has laws. But each tournament will have its regulations, like where the fielders can be, how far from the bat, and so on. But there are laws of cricket, which are the same on a beach in West Indies, or in a slum in Mumbai with stickball, or in a village in England, or in Western Supermare. Those are the laws of cricket. I mean, yes, it is the same game, but it's like a lot of British institutions. It sent its footprint abroad,
Yes,
and has been reinterpreted and often improved upon, or at least enhanced in different ways.
I was very proud the other day when Afghanistan beat Sri Lanka.
Oh, yeah.
I thought, isn't it incredible the reach that this
It's
has
getting
had?
wider and wider.
Yeah.
It's the second most popular sport in the world. By quite a long way. Obviously,
one is
football is the
football.
first, yeah. And a lot of that is to do with the fact that it's so... Well, it's the third religion in India. They call it the third religion.
Yeah.
Absolutely crazy about it. And obviously, India is about to overtake China as the country with the largest population in the world. So that kind of skews the statistics a bit. But it's the most popular sport in Nepal.
Nepal.
And I'm a patron of the MCC Foundation, and our aim is to spread cricket around the world as much as possible.
Are you going to get into South America?
Yes, that is.
Yes.
That's our next thing. It's not really there. I mean, there's a bit in Guyana, of course. We had
yes.
Mark Ramprakash and others, and who have sort of ancestors from there. And Guyana provides the West Indies with cricketers because it's Caribbean.
True.
But yeah, we want to if you can find a flat bit. But it's Rwanda, Kenya. Recently, the foundation went to the Lebanon and taught Syrian refugees who are penned up in camps with nothing to do at all, but turned to kind of crime and misery and upset. And to teach the girls and boys in particular is fantastic because a lot of these countries are countries in which girls have low expectations of their lives. As far as education, property rights and so on are concerned. And if you can get girls and boys playing cricket together, it's absolutely wonderful. There comes an age when they'll separate out into a girls' boy and a boys' team. But when they're young, it helps the boys respect and like the girls.
It's spreading into the Middle East, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And I suppose we can also talk of the terrors of the Middle East. We're speaking on a day. Who knows what's going to happen when this actually is broadcast, but we're speaking on a day when they announced this, to me, diabolical news about golf, which is a game I love as well, and the Saudi Arabian influence in it.
It's all money, Stephen,
so
it?
Because this is a free speech haven, I can talk about the behind this because it's only the strongest words will do sometimes. The hypocrisy.
I know a worse one, but I will tell you
Well, I'd love to hear it. No,
I'll write it on
I've got it out of my system now. That's the main thing. But no, it does upset me, and the history of what Saudi Arabia has done in the last 5 or 6 years, and now to be, I know it's a cliche word, but sports washing is essentially it. And the chances are, by the time you're watching this, that Lionel Messi will be playing for Saudi Arabia, as well as Cristiano Ronaldo and others.
It's amazing what money will do, isn't it? I mean, when you think that London was the #1 centre for the laundering of Russian dirty money, I mean, it didn't make me feel proud.
No, they called it Boristan for a time.
I didn't know that.
We're none of us entirely wide-eyed and naive about the world. We know that the world, and it has always been the case, that money talks and that everybody has a price to some extent.
Do you know what Napoleon said?
No, go on.
He said the surprising thing is not that every man has his price,
But how low it is.
Yes.
Yes, I would have said the
but
same.
how low it is. I think that's hilarious.
I've always thought the greatest power a human being can have in negotiations, whether it's as an actor, like in a film, as minor as that, or in a huge boardroom way, the greatest power you can have is the power to walk away.
Yeah.
Just to be able to say, oh, no, this is not for me, and go. But I know some people in business who will say that the first thing you sense when you sit round a table, say about the sale of a company or it going public, the share offering, is you instantly know the greedy ones. And they're the ones you want to have nothing to do with, who are in it to make money. And I am, in that sense, very naive. In the early 90s, late 80s, when I was aware that the internet was going to happen, and I became very excited by it. And through the 90s, I became very excited by it. And we'd have lots of meetings with people who had ideas, and the really good ones wanted to make something extraordinary. Like an artist or a craftsman, like someone who just wanted to make a better pair of shoes, make a better table, just the pleasure, the fun, the fulfillment of it. And then you started to notice, because the internet caught fire, that people were in it to make money. That the first thing they wanted to do was to build a service or a piece of software that they could immediately sell to, Bill Gates or to somebody else. And then it got worse. It got so
worse.
Much. Yeah, there's a word, and this is, in a sense, what Saudi Arabia is doing with sport. It's the darkest word of our era, I think, is the word disruption. It sounds simple. It's just the Latin for break down, break up, break into pieces. To disrupt, like you interrupt, you break into someone's conversation, and you get a rupture. It's a break, and so on. So In 2007, when Facebook was beginning to take off, Mark Zuckerberg famously said that the motto of Facebook is move fast and break things. And this was considered a heroic new stance. These young people were coming in, they were breaking up the way the world was, and they were making huge sums of money out of it. They were inventing new ideas and they were sweeping away everything from the past. And so you disrupt the bread and breakfast space with Airbnb. You disrupt the car hire and taxi services with Uber. You disrupt. And we're now living in a broken world because things have been disrupted and they've not been replaced with anything like.
And they've been disrupted by people who just want to be very, very rich.
Yes.
And not to do one thing superbly well.
And the betrayal, to me, the betrayal, the hypocrisy, whatever your word is, that somehow we believed in the 90s and early 2000s that these guys in jeans and T-shirts were just kind of, you know, gentle, sweet people who wanted the world to be better.
Yeah.
And we now know that in Orwell's magnificent image, the pigs are now wearing trousers. You know, the end of Animal Farm, they look through and they see the pig.
Yes, I forgot.
And it's all come round. And you realise these are worse in terms of their fierce, greedy.
But have you ever understood why people want to be so rich? We all want to be able to have a better bottle of wine, or we all want to have a nice car, or maybe a slightly bigger house. But I think the point of being very rich is to be able to tell people that you are very rich.
Yes, essentially. I think it is a display. It's very fashionable these days to look into genetics and ancestry and to picture our ancestors in a cave or in a field or, you know, hunting and gathering. And we know that some part of being human is acquisition, is territorial acquisition. And whether it's land, building a castle like this as a display as well as a defence. And money is a defence as well as display. It protects you from everything in the world, as a castle does.
But why such huge sums of it?
I don't know. I suppose when you get a huge sum...
Are they competitive with each other?
That's the point I was going to say. You join a sort of club in which, you know, people in the suburbs might say, they've got a better lawnmower than I have. I'm going to have to upgrade my lawnmower. I'm going to have to upgrade my strimmer and all the sort of suburban things. Keeping up with the Joneses, we call it. We've talked about that all our lives. We know it as a phenomenon. But you scale it up. You simply scale it up. And we know this is true. I mean, I can still picture the moment when I was 9 and I found an old Macintosh, an old raincoat. People used to wear them. And it had a 10-shilling note in it. And the joy, the absolute joy. Now, what you can't do is scale that joy up. If I then found £100,000 in a coat, I would be astonished. And I would go, wow. But I wouldn't be... well, 10 shillings is, you know, £0.50, so I wouldn't be 200,000 times happier than when I found that £10 note.
But people think more is better, don't they?
They do, absolutely.
I mean, alcoholics think more is better.
Yeah. But there are many aspects of humanity where we are bound, if we're honest, to inspect ourselves, to say, I get that, I feel like that. But also, I don't feel like that. I've always been very lucky with alcohol, for example. I do like a drink, I like wine, but I know I could never be an alcoholic. I just don't like it enough. I don't like feeling sick. I don't like having to cope with the responsibility of apologising the next day if I've been drunk. I don't like the fact that I might get a bit argumentative. And so I just, you know, could never be an alcoholic. But I could be lots of other things that I do recognise faults in. And similarly with money. I mean, I like having enough money, I'll be honest,
But
to
you
turn
said-
left on an aeroplane. I think it's the most... I still get excited by it. I still think, oh, my goodness, I'm going first class, and I love it. I mean, I just love it. And it's a disgrace, and I know I shouldn't, and I try and do this awful
the key word there.
carbon offsetting and all the
You
other
used the key
nonsense.
word, enough.
Enough, exactly, a sense of enough.
So these very rich people have no sense of enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you understand it? I mean, it's an illness, isn't it?
It is an illness, and I wrote a sort of autobiography about myself, which tried to address my propensity to overdo things myself, but not in money terms. But I noticed that I was at what we. It's awful.
What?
Generational wars. You know, you say baby boomer and millennial, and I just want to throw up when I hear all this. About
I'm sort of late imperialist.
What exactly? I mean, it seems so weird. But anyway, I am a baby boomer in the technical sense. And so I was born in the same year as Sugar Puffs, the cereal, right? So
I should never forget that.
I was of a generation for whom television advertising was first directed towards me when I was young, to eat Sugar Puffs and Ricicles and Frosties and sugary things. And I went to a school which had a tuck shop, you know, a little boarding school, and there were things like sherbet fountains with sherbet in it, white powder that you sucked in through a licorice straw, and they even extraordinarily had Spanish Galleon rolling tobacco, which was coconut shreds, but it was done exactly like a rolling tobacco packet that you'd see grown-ups using, and you would have a pipe made of licorice, and you would have cigarettes with red tips on the end, which were candy cigarettes. And you remember all these sweets. Well, you're probably a generation older. You didn't have quite
no,
those.
there was a tuck
But they
shop.
were... So you were being prepared for cocaine and tobacco. Essentially, you were given white powder and tobacco, and I never could eat enough of that. And I would break out of school bounds, go to the village shop and buy all the fruit salads and blackjacks and foamy shrimps and little rice paper flying saucers, and I just stuffed myself. I couldn't eat them enough. I got teeth missing here because of it. And then when I was a teenager, there was still... So I had this empty hole in me, this vast empty hole that said, feed me. I need this sugar. I need it. And then when it wasn't sugar, it became tobacco. And I smoked. And then in my 20s, it became cocaine. It became that. And I couldn't sit still without going, you know? And it's that addictive impulse that many people watching will know what I mean, and many people won't. Because this is the important thing to remember. As I said, not everybody has this. And it's a kind of addictive gene. And I guess the money people have it for money. There's this hole in them. They have to acquire, and they have to own.
And they don't know how to fill it.
No.
And they think, if I had another 500 million, I'd be happier.
Yes. Well, this is it. One of the things you know a lot about, you know, psychotherapy and things like that. And one of the things that always maddened me about self-help books and books on that is the ones that start off with goal orientation. Set yourself goals. And I think it's the most dangerous and despicable, inimical thing imaginable, because I don't know a human being who, when they reaches a goal they've set themselves, isn't dissatisfied.
Absolutely.
It's always an anticlimax, and you have to.
You know, it's so many of the Nobel Prize winners get very depressed when they win the Nobel Prize.
I can imagine exactly.
Yeah, because what do they do next?
Yeah.
And apparently the great chess players always get very depressed after huge energy.
Yes.
So
like
exactly.
these guys here, I can see. There they are.
Yeah.
They're getting to the end of their game, though, I can see.
Yes, one of them's got 2 queens.
I'm Andrew Doyle, executive producer of the Dinosaur Hour, and Lewis Schaefer with me here. You were the maitre d' in the Dinosaur Hour.
No, I was the star of the entire show, and I think people are going to see that when they.
You were.
They're going to see
we
it.
cut you out a lot.
You know what? If my mother was still living, she would be furious.
She would, but she's not, and I knew that was okay.
No, but I am in the opening. I hope you don't cut out the opening section.
No, you're in the opening section.
I'm in the opening section.
And of course, working with John Cleese, that must be exciting.
Well, that was that was amazing, really. I didn't appreciate it at the time, but then I'm sitting there working with him. I'm thinking, this is John Cleese.
Yeah.
This is John Cleese, as in cheese.
You've got to get that right.
Yeah.
In America, they
Yeah.
call him Cleese.
Yeah.
And he really has a problem with that. But you're an American and you're getting it right.
Well, my name is Schaefer. People say Schaffer. You just got to get used to it, or change your name to something that everybody pronounces.
Yeah,
properly.
people normally get mine right. Although I was called Andrew Boyle by
Yeah.
a critic once, made me angry.
Because that's probably the first time that's ever happened to you. With
Yeah.
me, my name has been misspelled. I remember one time I noticed my name was spelled correctly at a restaurant, and I was like, it was in my 30s, and I was like shocked because it never happens. But John Cleese.
John Cleese.
Yeah.
I mean, the great thing about the show was to be able to make the show that he wanted to make, which was talking to the people that he found interesting about the subjects that he found interesting. And that
Yeah.
isn't something that normally is granted by television channels to stars. They normally tell them what they have to do,
No.
where they have to stand,
Yeah.
all of that.
Well, let's just hope that people he finds interesting are people we find interesting.
Or that the audience finds interesting.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
Well, I found them interesting.
No, I found them interesting.
Yeah.
I have to find them interesting because I'm working with John Cleese.
Yes.
And as we're spending more time with the dude, I'm realizing, oh my God, this is
Yeah.
This is John
Well, I mean,
Cleese.
because Python was really big in America.
It was really big in America, and I think it was real. I don't know if it was really big in America. It wasn't really big in America. It was big among college kids.
Right,
And I was
okay.
at university. I was at university at the time, and I remember we watched all the episodes, and then we're waiting for the next thing to come out, and it wasn't like it was my first association with British television, whereas they don't produce as many episodes as they do in America.
They don't.
So you're sitting there waiting. John Cleese has unlimited patience.
He does.
Yeah.
But with you,
With me, with everybody.
I don't have limits. I'm very impatient with you.
I don't think you are, no. I think you're trying to do what's best for the show, and I think you just handle it in a bad way.
Yeah.
He's 83 years old. He knows what to do
Yes.
with people. And a lot of the thing that on screen is him like saying I'm an idiot or stupid or whatever it is.
Yes.
And I hope it comes across as being funny. I mean, I did cry afterwards.
You did, because there was an authenticity to it.
Yeah,
Which I picked up on.
But in our private dealings, he was very cordial.
It's an odd place to film it, the castle in the middle of Essex. It really was the middle
Yeah.
of nowhere. I mean, there was nothing anywhere. You know, we kept going to that same restaurant because there was only one
Yeah.
restaurant in the village.
Don't give the people the impression we were eating meals. But it was in the middle of nowhere, and I don't know why you chose it. I mean, you could have probably built a set for less money,
We probably could.
and it would have been closer, and you wouldn't have had to schlep people all the way to the middle.
Well, it's not-
Headington Castle.
It's not very useful for you to tell me this now.
Yeah.
This is the kind of advice I could have had before the show started.
Listen to me. I try to keep out of your business, Andrew. I'm so happy to be getting a job. My life was at the lowest point. You saved me. The thing I learned. Can I say one thing? 'Cause
You can
people
say whatever you
wanna know
like,
What
yeah.
actual John Cleese? Less is more. I know they say that about all the great actors.
Yes. Yes, whereas your
Yeah.
instinct is to overplay.
Yes, because
Yeah.
I'm an amateur and a failure.
You're a drama queen.
Yeah, but
Everything's got to be a drama with you.
I'm more of a drama princess. I haven't reached the queen stage.
The Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese, on GB News.
Is there any way we could say you've got enough now?
Well, it's going to be very interesting because for the past few hundred years, all of us have used to the idea that we fulfill ourselves by work. If we're lucky, it's good work that does fulfill us. But that's not going to be true for very long. And it isn't something that was true in the past. Work was not a normal thing to do.
If you said to an 18th century aristocrat what...
Well, an aristocrat, certainly, that's true.
But you know what I mean? They would have thought you were mad.
Yeah. And I suppose one has to... I'm talking about before the agricultural revolution, which is not very long ago in terms of the length of our existence as a species, as a viable species. We could go back in time before the agricultural revolution and shag someone from that era and we would have babies. You know, we are the same species.
Same lot.
Yeah. And then we didn't work. This idea of work. I mean, the agricultural thing meant we had to stay in one place and suddenly peasants became, you know, subject to the people on horseback and class and hierarchy was established. But it's coming again because of artificial intelligence. There will be much less need to work. And there's always this problem. I've been I've been thinking about artificial intelligence since the 80s, because I used to get very excited by this man, Marvin Minsky, who was the often called the father of AI. And I used to read his essays and books and things. And
his forecasts haven't proved very...
No, they haven't. But his analysis of what intelligence is and what it might be, I think, was interesting. And one of my heroes, Richard Feynman, who I'm sure you know, the great physicist. And he made a terribly good point about when someone asked him whether artificial intelligence would come and whether machines would think like us. And he said, no, they won't think like us. They will never think like us. When we make machines, we make them to do things we don't do, not things we already do. So, for example, we can run. But when we make a bicycle, we make something that is totally different, that goes a bit faster, actually. But it can't... I mean, a perfect example is a cheetah. That's the fastest land animal. It goes around 70 miles an hour or something, isn't it? Well, we can't begin, and we wouldn't even think of trying to imitate it, make a machine like a cheetah. It would be ridiculous. So instead we invent a wheel and then eventually an engine that can push the wheels, and it's nothing like a cheetah, but it can go faster than a cheetah. So it's our version. And similarly with intelligence, we won't try and imitate human intelligence. We will find, as we are beginning to do, we will find ways of assembling and sorting data, which isn't really intelligence, but it produces results that are way beyond us, just as a car produces results way beyond a cheetah. But it's at a different sort of achievement. But it will... I think governments are beginning to get wise to this. The UBI, the Universal Basic Income, is the thing that we're trying out in this country now in 2 regions. In Finland, they've tried it out in the whole country. Essentially, the money that artificial saves in terms of labour costs, white-collar labour costs, as much as blue, that money goes into giving everybody an income. Yeah. So they don't have to work. And then...
How did it work in Finland?
I think it worked... Well, Finland is still the happiest country on earth, so it can't have done too much harm. I mean, it will, like anything, it will change and develop. But, you know, the cynics say... I did a lecture on AI about 7 years ago at Hay on Wye, and I talked about the possibility of a universal basic income and things like that. And a lot of people asked the question, so... Are you saying that we've all got to become poets and potters and painters and artists? And I said, well, although that would be quite pleasing, it obviously isn't particularly viable. Who's going to buy the wretched stuff that we make? But we do have to think about what people will do. We have this sense that there is idleness and that idleness is a terrible thing. But actually, if you read Bertrand Russell's famous essay on idleness, which I'm sure you know, maybe it's a very wonderful thing and will yield enormous fruit.
Wonderfully liberating for everyone.
So. Yes.
Once they get used to the fact that they have to find out what they're interested in.
Yeah.
When I first went to America, I was fascinated by how important work was. And I came back after about 1.5 years, and I remember getting on a tube with the Evening Standard, and there was a piece in it by A.J. Ayer, one of the great philosophers.
Yes, the logical positivist.
I can still remember that what he was saying was that the first people who went off to America, New England, were the Puritans. Yeah. And when they sort of sat down and said, well, what could we do? He said, well, shall we have a dance? No, we can't do that. No theatre. And what else could we do? We played cards. No, that's not allowed. So in the end, the only thing they could really do was work. And I still see a very strong Puritan streak in America.
Yeah, hugely.
Between good and bad. I mean, I don't like smoking, and I'd rather it didn't, but the savagery with which the non-smokers will persecute the smokers is just stupid.
Yeah.
So is there anything there in that with what we're talking about with work? I mean, in fact, can't we just play cricket or read books?
It would be wonderful. The trouble is, I personally have been poisoned by the work ethic in that I am addicted to it. I have above my desk a quotation from Noel Coward, which is, work is more fun than fun. And I've been very lucky to find that so. If I have a
Isn't
day
that
off,
because
I
you're
don't know,
doing something that
is enjoyable.
is
to
really
me. Yeah,
enjoyable.
exactly.
I mean, there's three types of work. There's work you hate, and then there's work you love, and then there's work where you like bits and don't like other bits. And so you try to do as much of the things you like and as little of the things you don't like. But it's all like that. But if you love your work, why would you want to stop?
Exactly.
If you can, presumably, the new problem is, well, what do you count as work?
Exactly. What I count as work, other people wouldn't. A lot of people would say, how fabulous that I'm going to retire, or how fabulous I'm no longer working. I can garden. I'd rather eat my own legs than dig and fork and be a Monty Don. But he obviously enjoys it, and lots of people do. And they wouldn't like doing the things I do, you know, writing and things. As you know, writing is agony. I mean, absolute agony.
The people I feel sorry for are the businessmen, because they really are motivated by money. Now, when you give them all the money that they could have earned if they worked hard, they're going to be in a terrible position.
You talk about A.J. Ayer is very interesting, because in philosophy, he and his fellow Vienna school, you know, the scientistist types, basically felt that ethics as a branch of philosophy had died. It was no longer particularly interesting. It was, you'd teach it in universities, you know, and things, you know. But then technology, biotechnology, as well as the internet and other things, have meant now that people can leave university with a master's or a doctorate in ethics, and they'll get a 6-figure opening salary at big corporations, because ethics is at the heart of the problems that we're talking about. How do you decide what is an ethical artificial intelligence? How do you decide what is an ethical way to lay people off work and to keep them happy?
So the corporations are studying this really seriously.
They're trying to. I mean, there has been a wave of firing in Silicon Valley lately, and some ethicists have gone. But I remember seeing a Berkeley University. You have to say that. Obviously, the pronunciation is Berkeley.
You know what a graduate is called.
Berkeley, presumably. But there was a philosophical quarterly from Berkeley magazine, and it just said at the top, philosophy, no longer just a stylish route to poverty, question mark. Suddenly it was becoming the hottest discipline in universities, philosophy.
Wonderful.
And it is exciting, because there is so much to think about. And all of us are free to do that.
Are the Bill Gates is thinking about it?
He does. He is a
better,
thoughtful man,
he?
I think, isn't he?
But the ones who really spend all this money trying to get into space on their own rockets...
Well, they follow a branch of philosophy that is not very academically fashionable or admired, which is objectivism, which is the philosophy of Ayn Rand. You know, the sort of libertarian philosophy of the Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged, which are more popular now than in her own time. Peter Thiel, for example, who's a very powerful investor in all kinds of things, he's a great admirer of Ayn Rand. And there's a new philosophy called long-termism, which sounds rather admirable. We've always thought bad thing about politics is so short-term. But this is a totally different thing. This regards the future of humanity in hundreds, or if not thousands of years, is the most important thing we can think about. And a few pandemics and diseases and climate change are pinpricks in the long history. After all, the Ice Age wiped most of us out, but it gave a small cadre of surviving humans the chance to become our ancestors. And they think very hard about that. And there's a lot of paranoid fear that that's why, you know, Musk and Bezos and people are wanting to go to Mars. They know the Earth is absolutely doomed. Because the image I have is we are children playing on the beach, making sandcastles, with our back to the sea. And on the sea, various currents are combining. They are, for example, bioaugmentation, brain-machine interfacing, which is something Elon Musk is doing, where you interface with a computer and a computer with you, so it reads your thoughts and you can control it with your mind, if you like. Robotics itself, quantum computing, and artificial intelligence of different kinds, new materials, nanomaterials, and so on. all of these technologies, which are transformative on their own, not to mention genomics and gene editing, are like separate swells in the ocean that are combining to make a gigantic tsunami. And as I say, we are playing on the beach, wondering about little things, you know, like this particular strike, or what names we call ourselves, what our identities are. There are these tiny little issues that we are obsessed with.
So what's the tsunami?
The tsunami is the combination, the confluence of all these technologies, all changing each other.
So you mean life will be transformed in a way we can't begin to guess at?
Yes.
All right, let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
A lot of social media is just awful. People being unbelievably nasty to people. If you post something on social media, surely it would be very easy to have an identification on that post which would tell you who'd posted it, which would shame people into posting a lot of the nastiest stuff.
Yes.
Why don't they do it?
Well, in the case of Twitter, Elon Musk is a libertarian, free speech absolutist, he calls himself, and I think he would regard any regulation which enforced something like that, a denial of anonymity and the right to anonymity.
But a denial of anonymity.
I agree with you.
You're not forcing it on people.
No.
What you're saying is if you want to post something,
People
you
should know
have
who
to
you
tell
are.
people who you are.
I think it's a mixture of genuine sense that they want it to be a free space where people can comment without being got at, for example. Because the problem is, you know, you might express a view in some of the hot button issues of today. You might express a view on gender and something like that, and you will get upon both sides. Doesn't matter which side.
But that's the problem about expressing a view anyway.
Well, it is. It is. And so anonymity gives a sort of confidence to some, but the confidence to terrible people, as we know. It's a disaster. And I
put things on Twitter, as you do.
I used to. Yes.
You don't anymore?
No. I'm afraid once Mr. Musk got there, I just felt no.
Oh, I know.
And this is why you mustn't believe anything I say about the future, because I believed when in 2007, when I joined Twitter and it was just starting, I believed that it would melt away boundaries and divisions and the old problems, and that we would all be brothers and sisters.
But the problem with technology is there were always good people who will use it for good reasons, and then there are rather bad people who will use it for bad reasons.
Yes.
That's true of everything that's ever been invented.
I look at Gutenberg's first printing press, and you look at it, that is capable of printing the poems of John Keats or Mein Kampf. It doesn't know any different.
No.
Ka-chung, there's Mein Kampf. Ka-chung,
Every invention has a good and a bad.
Yes, there has
at the beginning, everyone's so excited about it, they only see the positive.
That's right. The technology itself has no, I think that the technical term would be no moral valency.
Yes.
You know.
I really enjoyed making the show. Wide variety of different types of people, and the team were all great, and the extras were all great.
Yeah.
And you got to talk to all of these people. You developed quite a warm relationship with the nuns, particularly.
You got a few telephone numbers, yeah. And then I kissed a nun.
You did?
Well, as you know, I'm in the film business myself, and I've been on many.
You should explain that to people, that you're not really in the film business. You are an extra.
I am a supporting artist.
Supporting artist.
But I have had relatively large roles in some of these films.
Well, you had a line in Wonder Woman, didn't you?
I had a line in Wonder Woman.
What was the line?
We have to see the president, something like that.
You do that very well.
I did.
I was convinced.
People notice it. Whatever it is, don't belittle me, Andrew.
I'm being sincere.
These people don't know.
No, I'm being sincere. You're interpreting me as belittling you. I'm not.
So I have been
I'm impressed.
I'm not listening to you. Okay. I've been on many film shoots.
Yes.
And not even considering this is your first time, you seem totally in control.
What, as a producer?
Of a producer,
yeah.
Totally in control. The director, of course, was competent, and so I thought it was extremely...
It was a professional set.
It was a professional set.
We do things professionally at GBNews, that's the thing.
And really well done.
Yeah, well,
really well done.
Well,
and I thought it was I thought the production values, I thought if I had to do it, I would have saved a little bit of money, and maybe not had cats, maybe not had extras.
Well, I think the cats were quite integral to the whole ethos, you know. John was very keen on the cats.
He wanted the
John
king.
has lots of cats.
He does have lots of cats,
and
yeah.
so he wanted cats there.
You know, whenever I say something controversial on Facebook, I always post a picture of a cat.
It does actually mollify any situation
Yeah.
instantly, doesn't it?
It does.
If I've been in lots of Twitter arguments, what I do is I just put a cat video out there,
Yeah.
and it's like a cleanser,
Yeah.
and everyone just calms down.
And we're
it's all
happy
fine,
we've
because
seen cats.
You can't retain anger and rage in the face
Of a cat.
like, big furry face. You can't.
Right.
You were on the New York comedy scene.
Yeah.
Then you came to the UK, and for some reason you stayed.
For some reason, I stayed. I wanted to see my children.
Oh, it was because family
Basically,
mattered.
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I would have gone home if I didn't have any children because they liked me initially a little bit, and then they turned on me.
Well, the children or the audience?
Everybody.
Everybody.
Everybody. This is British people think they're the funniest people on earth, and you're not. You're not funny, as you can tell. He's not funny, trying to be funny.
I'm not trying to be funny.
You're trying to be funny. You can see. Here's. Sorry about this, Andrew.
That's all right.
Is that? I think with Americans, Americans like to be loved.
Is that right?
And English people don't want to be loved.
Do you know what, that is true? I noticed that with American comedians. There's a lot
Yeah.
more sense of like me, you know,
Yeah.
like they're a lot more bubbly, whereas a lot of British comedians are almost standoffish.
Yeah.
It's almost like they resent you for laughing at them.
I was thinking more of the audience. Is that the audience in this country? If you tell the audience, "Oh my God, I love England. What a great country! Your castles. You're great people. You're so much more spiritual. You're so much more."
The audiences don't like it.
But if you go to America and you say, "America, you know, you."
Well, look, I've performed in America, not much, just a few times.
Yeah.
The audiences are very, how would you put it, vocal.
Yeah.
Very I mean, they cheer at anything, and they laugh at anything.
Yeah, because they paid money. They want to enjoy themselves. You
So
people.
it's capitalist, that's what it is.
It's you pay. I don't know. That's not the right word.
no,
it's not capitalist. You pay money. You're going to get your money's worth.
don't think it's that,
Americans
though.
are going to get their money's worth.
I love that you can psychoanalyze an entire
I've
nation.
thought about it. I've been here for 23 years already. I've had too much of you people.
You know, you need to be a comedian, you need to be a performer. Something inside you, you know, is screaming out for attention.
No, I could do lots of things. I've done other things, and I've done other things well. I sold advertising space. I was an estate agent.
Were you?
Yeah, I did lots of other things.
The Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese, on GB News. Artificial intelligence has always seemed to me the great problem in science is that if you can't measure something, you think it can't be scientific. Science is about
Yes, it
measuring
is.
things,
A lot of
right?
it is, yeah.
And sometimes they invent things like behaviorism, which is all about the business of being able, right, to measure things and not about anything else. Very interesting.
No,
So-
that's right.
so almost everything that goes on in here is very, very hard to measure.
Yes, it is. Very hard to quantify.
And since human beings robbed of their emotions by an accident, are unable to cope despite the fact they're completely logical still, because they don't have emotions helping them to make a decision, how does that apply to AI? Wouldn't, if it's going to really take over, wouldn't we have to give it an emotional range to motivate it, which we have no chance of giving it?
Well, again, I would return to that point of Feynman's that we would do something that was like an equivalent. What we have now has been brilliantly described by critics as not intelligence or anything remotely like intelligence. A stochastic parrot is the phrase that is used of the kind of chat GPT-4 and these kinds of things that have become very popular. They are essentially a probabilistic guess at what the next thought should be based on its ability to access a vast corpus of data, which depends on there being such a thing as the internet that has this data electronically available
All of
at
that
the speed of light.
I accept, and that's
so
the way it is.
The next step, artificial general intelligence, as it's known, would that require sentience, a sense of self, consciousness? Would the system be aware that it was a system? Of course, at the moment, it parrots that it's aware.
Yeah.
I cannot answer that question because I am just a large language model, it says, when you ask it something delicate. This is when people are worried about what's called the singularity, when it suddenly becomes aware of itself, and whether this would give it an actual emotion in the way that our brains have emotions, or an electronic equivalent, that's to say, a sort of need of some kind, a need to do something, a need to make itself something that it isn't. Because, in a sense, that's the human, not even an animal thing. I mean, you look at these lovely animals, and one of the things we love about animals, I think, is that they don't wake up in the morning feeling terrible about yesterday and how they let themselves down. You know, a tree frog spends 100% of its time being a tree frog.
It's
a
wonderful
human
because they're
spends
living in the present.
Yes, they're living
and
in
my
the...
daughter's just acquired a completely blind dog.
I have a friend with a blind dog.
And it's ecstatically happy now, and it's wonderful
Yeah.
because it doesn't wake up in the morning thinking, I wish I had a couple of hours.
Yeah. Or I wish I was a cat. You know, I mean, we as humans, we wish to be other things all the time. We are just so dissatisfied with ourselves.
They teach us so much, these things.
They do, don't they?
And I think the value of pets is that they bring us into the present. That when we're stroking a cat or playing with a dog, we're totally in the present, which is where happiness lies.
It's absolutely right.
I'm thinking of Damasio. Do you remember Antonio Damasio's
yes.
book about the guy who had a perfectly logical brain?
That's right.
But he couldn't make any decisions because his emotional intelligence had been destroyed.
It rendered him...
So I'm saying if they're going to take over the world for us, they have to develop an emotional intelligence which will tell them how to do that.
Well,
motivate
no,
them
I mean,
no?
I think that's like saying a car has to develop legs if it's going to be like a cheetah. The point is it won't be ever like a cheetah, but it will go faster. But its style of going forward is not legs. And similarly, a computer's style of sentience wouldn't need to imitate a human one, just as a car doesn't need to imitate a cheetah, or indeed a human. You don't, and a robot won't be a walking android type thing, unless we want that for fun. But, you know, that's not the way it need be. Sometimes you imitate nature, of course, and people love to imitate geckos for sticky things, all the rest of it in nature. Obviously, it's had millions of years to practice and fail and practice and fail and practice and fail.
But the basic rule of computers, am I right, or is this old-fashioned? Shit in, shit out.
Yes, GIGO, garbage in, garbage out, was the polite way of putting it.
How can they go beyond what we put in them?
Well, they look elsewhere. That's one of the things the internet has done, is that we don't put anything into that. It goes out and looks for it. We tell it to look.
Oh, I see. So
It
it's orders it to look.
It scans the world of data.
And not to look for anything in particular.
No, exactly, not to look at anything in particular. I mean, at the moment, you have to remember that what you're looking at now is, let's say, GPT-4, which is the sort of publicly available second version of the OpenAI bot, as they like to call it. That is like looking at Carl Benz's car in 1895. Jolly impressive. Look at that. It can go 10 miles an hour. It's amazing what it will be next year and the year after. And in 10 years' time, look at what the motor car became. Look at how it transformed everything about our lives and our cities and our
That's because the people inventing motor
and
cars
a lot of people
were motivated
Yes.
to make them better.
And also, you have to remember an enormous number of people who loved their horses looked at it and said, it's pathetic. It'll never catch on. It's been said. I mean, I remember when I first had.
No, I get all that. But then there's a human. If the cars are improving, it's because there's some human who wants to make them better.
Yes.
So where does that emotion, I want to do this for some reason, come from? If we can't make a decision, if our emotional faculties are not
It's tasked
intact,
to make itself better.
It's tasked.
It's tasked to make itself better.
Yeah,
even
but
the ones we have now.
things like chess, there's no element of the human mind there in chess. So you can always come up with a computer that will beat a man eventually.
Yes, and
because its memory is better, and it can play all these games and find out what works, what doesn't work.
Yes.
So you got that.
Yes.
But when you're dealing with things where there's an element of the human emotion involved in order to create a decision.
The point is, it's artificial intelligence. We're not making human intelligence in a machine. We are making artificial intelligence.
I know, but I'm asking, is it limited?
Idea.
Is it limited in what it can achieve because it can't decide to do something because it wants to?
Yes, probably limited in that it will. We hope that it will remain something that takes instruction.
We hope.
So, that it won't say, I want to paint a ceiling, and it then produces something better than the Sistine Chapel because I have a need to do it. But But given the exponential way it will improve itself, write code to improve itself, and continue to improve
that I
itself.
understand.
Given that, it's very hard to make a stable and safe
So I have one
prediction.
last question.
Yeah.
Cricket.
Yes, back to cricket. There you are.
What was the point of the 100? We've got 20 overs, which is 120 balls. Now somebody says, no, it would be better if we only had 100 balls. Are we going to go slowly down until the match has been pared down to about 30 balls for each innings, right?
Yeah.
And then all the rest of the time we can watch rockets going off. And
It's money, of course. It is money. It's advertising. It's getting people in the ground.
What's the difference between 120 balls and 100?
It seems not much, but sometimes these things do make a difference. I personally not a huge fan of the 100. Some people I know who are real cricketers and absolute lovers of the game think it's a fantastic innovation.
I thought it was cricket for people who didn't like cricket.
Well, it's to introduce people who don't like cricket to cricket, and then
see. So it's a marketing
it's a gateway drug.
It's not a game, it's a marketing exercise, right?
Kind of, yes. I mean, I'm afraid that's the way things go because grounds might otherwise be empty, and so the only way you can fill them is to market the game. You can't expect them.
I love Test matches and I love the county championship.
People of our generation do, but I think we have to be realistic about getting younger people into it, and they want to spend an evening having fun in the way Americans go to a baseball game. And I know it sounds terrible to imitate another American institution.
Yes, it's for people with limited attention span.
If you like, I think that may well be.
You're sweetie to come. Bless you, dear man.
I'm sure I've talked nonsense, but it's been
Yes,
enormous
but we're
fun.
going to edit you very, very heavily.
Yeah. No, it's great. It really is. It's been
You
fabulous.
can
talking to you.
choose any one of those cats you like and take it with
don't
you.
tell me that. I would.
And now, time for a song.
They say that life is fleeting, like some shoddy central heating. First you're toasty, then you're mostly in the cold. There are some who say it's ruthless, that we end up bald and toothless, but who admits the benefits of getting old? Mother Nature is a pensioner, and though we shouldn't mention her, she carries on as though she's gone berserk. We aspire to this endeavor, that world peace will reign forever. But how can it when the planet doesn't work? I can't wait for the apocalypse, the atmospheric, esoteric whistle-stop eclipse. There's a cost of living crisis. Peppa Pig is joining ISIS. There's bugger all to live for, so we're ready to die. I can't wait for the apocalypse. What kind of blunt and jubilant atomic clock is this? There is no second coming, just a bog with lousy plumbing. We don't need a horoscope to certify that the end of the world is nigh, 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 nigh. Night is quite alluring, and to me it's reassuring that the bun fight over sunlight is adjourned. Oblivion is jolly. There's no need to bring a brolly, for extinction's a distinction to be yearned. It's quite common for an earthling to expect a fresh rebirthing, re-embark as Joan of Arc or Mao Zedong. But if you dream of smut emergings on a cloud of native virgins, when you've signed out, you will find out you were wrong. I can't wait for the apocalypse, the fine and dandy cotton candy lollipop eclipse. There are demons swinging axes, but at least you won't pay taxes. So bring on Armageddon, 'cause we're ready to fly. I can't wait for the apocalypse, a final pucker from the with the proper lips. Let the universe be blasted. It was spiffing while it lasted. So let's wave a metaphysical goodbye. For the end of the world is nigh.
Next time on the Dinosaur Hour.
It's making the point that not only is cancel culture real, but it's so bad we're going to be studying it in 100 years.
It is odd when you think about it that there is an ideology which has become a dominant value that nobody is allowed to question. We didn't vote it in, right?
Right.
I mean, when you think about it, it's like, really, no one's allowed to question this?
But you, white,
Right.
heteronormative, from a colonializing nation.
Oh, I'm an imperialist
you
to
go
the
into
core, yeah.
exactly. You go into this terrain with some severe baggage on your side.
Are you going to be problematic again?
I love that word.
There's also people who think that the key to saving the world is less and less freedom of speech.
Yes.
You would think we would have learned a bit from Galileo.
Hello, thank you for being a big part of GB News.
We'd like to wish you and your loved ones a Christmas season full of comfort and joy.
as well as a peaceful and prosperous new year.
From our family
To yours.
We are proud to be your channel.
Merry Christmas.
Happy Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Happy Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas.
Here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Merry Christmas. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you,
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests, and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels
we're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and